From the Heritage Foundation in the Rush Limbaugh studios. By the way, love the tip of the hat to Rush Limbaugh. Kevin Roberts is here. He's the president of the Heritage Foundation, one of the bravest guys I know, one of the smartest guys I know, and doing a lot of great stuff. The president kind of distanced himself from Project 2025, which is a heritage, if I'm not mistaken. But recently, he's come out because Russ Vogt is really kind of the architect of a lot of 2025 stuff, right? And the president has seemed to be a little reluctant to get down to it and just slash Russ. I loved Mike Lee saying, he said Russ has been waiting for this since puberty. We have the shutdown. The president looks like he might unleash Russ. That's really good news, because I've been waiting for this. Are we going to do it?
I think we're going to do it. And the reason we're going to do it is in every other policy area, Glenn, and it's great to be with you, by the way. Yeah. Welcome to Heritage.
Yeah, thank you.
In every other policy area, the president has been so courageous. I mean, think about what's in the news today with Israel. Think about creating peace all around the world. And for the first time, and as long as I can remember, maybe since I was going through puberty, we're actually winning the messaging on a shutdown.
It's crazy.
It is. But the conservative, not just the conservative base, but the American people, well, they want real substantive reform. That's what they voted for last November. And we're not going to get that unless Russ has the opportunity to work through these reductions in force of back office personnel, to actually work through a responsible reduction in the size and scope and expense of government. That's a kind of long-winded way, Glenn, of saying I've got great faith that President Trump has already told Russ, go for it. Let's get this done.
So when? I'm sorry, I'm just like a kid in a candy shop.
I'll be clear.
When?
I don't know when, because I'm sitting here on the outside very happily, but I can tell you, you referenced our transition project. Since 1980, when Heritage started the first of these, which we called Mandate for Leadership, we've been talking about a reduction in government. This is the first time we have a real opportunity for this to actually happen. So what I can tell our friend Russ and our friend President Trump and Vice President Vance, something they know, which is that tens of millions of Americans voted for them for precisely this to happen. Full speed ahead. Keep doing the wonderful messaging that every single member of the cabinet does.
Like what should they be cutting right now?
Well, look, when they took office several months ago, there were nearly 2.5 million federal employees. We did an analysis over the years at Heritage, which suggested that you could have a third as few of federal employees. You could have fewer than 2 million employees. That's a way of saying that when the left says, oh, you're cutting the scientists and all the essential people, not at all. You're cutting people who are doing layers and layers and layers and no private business. Could you have that kind of excess? No. It's nothing against those human persons who are occupying those jobs, right? We care for them. They're fellow Americans. But some of them, let's remember, are ideological hacks who have been protected by an overwrought civil service protection that needs to be reformed as well. At Heritage, we're saying, let's rip the Band-Aid off and let's do this once and for all.
So what happens? Russ does this. What kind of lawsuits follow? Can this be permanent?
Some of it can be permanent. And again, speculating with some information about how one might go about this reform theoretically, there are probably hundreds of thousands of jobs in the federal government that could be cut permanently without any lawsuit that actually has substance behind it. We're not talking about just unilaterally eliminating XYZ agency. We're talking about going agency by agency at budget lines and eliminating duplicative jobs, the very kinds of things that every private business, especially a small business, has to do. This is common sense reform. But ultimately, to kind of come back to your opening question, Glenn, it needs to happen now. You've got in Speaker Johnson a legislative leader who is outstanding on the substance and the messaging of this. He's actually popular with the American people.
Crazy.
Press the advantage. Now is the time. And I can tell you, going back to your comment about our transition project, Heritage led 110 other conservative groups in this transition project. The conservative base is there. The American people are there. We want to see this happen.
I will tell you, I've been saying for the last couple of weeks that if the president would just figure out a way to make sure airplanes don't fall out of the sky, that the military is paid for, that the checks to the elderly and the hungry are making it home, just take care of the essentials that the Constitution says we're supposed to. nobody would really see the bad impact. And you let this go for 8 weeks, as long as the airports are running fine, as long as everything is running on time, that the average person, they're going to get to a point where they're going to go, why do we have all these people? Non-essential really does mean non-essential.
No, it's true. I was in Dallas Airport Sunday, coming back from watching my Longhorns beat the Sooners, which is awesome. And an acquaintance of mine who's reasonably conservative said, isn't the shutdown awful? And this turned into a kind of a public conversation at this gate at the DFW airport, where I said, well, it's awesome. It's awesome because we're not cutting the scientists, which was her accusation. We're not cutting essential employees. There are TSA agents here. There are air traffic control people in the tower. There are no delays at the airport. We're paying the troops. These are all matters of justice. How about we cut the fat? And it's just common sense to the average American, Glenn, that there is a lot of fat in a budget that has created a $37 trillion national debt. If we have any hope of turning the corner economically, financially, fiscally in this country, it starts with this shutdown.
I just did a monologue on the price of gold. A little terrifying. What is that telling us?
A lot terrifying.
Price of silver, a little terrifying. And then the grab and control of China of the rare earth minerals. And I don't know how to solve this one, because right now we're doing some things that we have to do to be able to win this AI race, because if we don't, China will win and we'll all be China. But if we fight it in the wrong way, we'll just be an American version of China. I don't like these public-private partnerships, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you stand on that? What are your thoughts on this?
Generally speaking, I and all of us at Heritage do not like the public-private partnerships. And at the very least, giving the administration benefit of the doubt, we would like more details about how they're going to work. But you make a really good point that it's not a choice between either allowing China to totally co-opt us, which is the path we were on under Biden, or basically to mimic China and become a weaker version of China. We need to be America. We need to have full-throated endorsement of free enterprise and the free market here, with one exception. Anything that is in the realm of national security, even my most strident libertarian friends say, yes, of course, Kevin, right now, the Chinese Communist Party is the greatest adversary we've ever faced. Let's focus on that. So that's a way of saying, I think the solution to this, which is pretty elegant and largely broadly supported on the political right, is focus on national security. Let's make sure that we are ending the ridiculous over-permitting and regulation of our own rare earth minerals. Let's also make sure, if I may make this point, that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon don't have what is, in essence, a duopoly on military. Yeah. We want them to be involved. They're good men and women. They're good innovation, but there's even better innovation coming from smaller businesses.
Big time.
That is what really needs to be honored. And I think if we do that, within a couple of years, Glenn, it's going to be obvious to Xi Jinping and his cronies that the United States is back on a level footing with them.
So how do we solve the energy problem? President Trump said, I'm going to eliminate all these problems. We can build nuclear power plants, et cetera, et cetera. And I want that to happen. And I think the government does need to be involved, at least in just deregulation of everything, while keeping enough regulations to keep us safe. But we need massive build out. We, under FDR, it was, the government that built all the dams and everything else. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about how this is rolling out? And are we making progress on this? Because I don't see massive power plants being built. And without it, we're going to have rolling blackouts and brownouts all across the country.
I agree with your diagnosis fully, and I have been worried about that over the years. I'm more optimistic now because I've had several meetings around the country with people who are investing in micro nuclear plants. And if the government does two things, number one, get out of the way, which specifically means stop the over-regulation, the over-permitting of any kind of nuclear, including these small areas.
Which are completely different than the old ones. And the old ones were the safest energy we've ever made in the history of man.
Yeah, that's right.
But these are even better.
And then secondly, let private business do what private business does. that private capital is going to flow into those places. I mean, think about places in southwestern Pennsylvania, which of course should have more coal plants.
I know.
But micronuclear is at least the best short-term strategy, especially as we think about all of the energy usage of these data centers and of AI. And so I'm real keen on that.
They will get it first.
But we need another 18 to 36 months of this in order for us to have any hope that in 4 or 5 years we aren't going to have rolling blackouts.
It's an amazing time we live in, isn't it?
Look, my kids ask me, they're teenagers, early 20s, and they're optimistic because of their faith, their supernatural level. But even more than that, or in addition to that, I should say, they are still very optimistic about America. And do you know why? Because they tell me, and they're all Trump fans, all Vance fans. They said, Dad, these men and the men and women who are in the cabinet, we know, fight for us and fight for America. And even when they might get something wrong or maybe half wrong, it's so rare. And they tell me they're just so optimistic about the future. When I hear them say that, and my wife and I don't coach them to say that, I can't help but think that these very challenging times, we think about the assassination of our mutual friend Charlie Kirk, we think about all the nonsense that goes on. God has put us here at this time and in this place.
What an honor.
And we can both fight and be zealous and firm as you are every day, while also being cheerful and attracting people into this movement, because it's a movement about the future of America, the future of truth, and we get to do it. It's totally awesome.
And there's a change. Since the Charlie Kirk assassination, there's a massive change of hope that I think comes from the spiritual movement that has been going on. I just purchased a book, a Bible, one of the first Bibles to be printed in America. We couldn't print a Bible under the king, for 200 years. We win the war, we go to Congress, and we start printing Bibles. First one is the Aiken Bible, and that was for use in schools. And it's the only Bible that is endorsed by Congress. It says it on the front page, an endorsement of Congress. The Bible we just bought was the one that was sponsored by George Washington. And so at the top, because they were so expensive to print, they would go to rich people and say, hey, can you sponsor the printing of this Bible? They would put a lot of money in it so others could buy it. So all of the sponsors, George Washington, the vice president, and his entire cabinet, the testimony of Christ. We got that and we thought, we're still doing our investigation, but we are really pretty sure that that is the last time a president, vice president, and cabinet has testified to the truth of the gospel from that time until Charlie Kirk's funeral.
As you were telling me the story about the Bible, which I just learned as you were telling me this, my historian head was going through quickly, although I definitely was listening, Glenn. Promise you, my friend.
You can multitask. I got it.
A little bit. I was
me too.
I was thinking, has there been another event like that? No. Not until Charlie's memorial service.
When almost all of the cabinet, the vice president, the president, all stood up and testified of Christ. It was incredible. And people will say, oh, that's fascist. No. Look, the last time it was happening is when we first had liberty under George Washington. Isn't that crazy?
It is. I remember when I was leading this college of faith and we rejected student loans and grants because we wanted to remain independent. We had people who didn't share that faith. This is a Catholic college who emailed me. In fact, there was a kind of an atheist guy from New York who emailed me and said, I don't agree with your faith, but I know that if that gets violated, all of my rights get violated too. Yeah. And it stuck with me as a common sense endorsement of what Americans in our founding and sense have known.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everything.
Thanks for being with you, man.
Appreciate it. From the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts.